We move on to our next, which is creating poetic spaces through interactive typography by Priti Pandurangan, who represents a setup called Graminir, India. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. So, Priti, please come along and make your presentation.
Thank you, Adinta ma'am. Hi everyone, my name is Priti Pandurangan, and I'm delighted to present you with my master's capstone thesis from 2019 when I passed it with 50. This project combines my understanding and interpretation of classical Indian poetry as a practicing Bharatanatyam artist, and my interest in expressive typography as a designer, and my experience of using programming as a creative medium. Duality of purpose between the visual and verbal aspects of typography is well expressed by Carl Swan in his book Language and Typography. He says, quote unquote, there's clearly a very strong relationship between the conception of words as a message and their transmission in visible form. We have seen rapid digitalization of media through screens. The post digital era will be defined by augmenting the physical world with digital transformation and information. And in this way, we try and reconnect back to space in both meaningful and beautiful ways. And as of now, we can classify presentation media into three categories: static, temporal, and interactive. Typography in this post digital era expands the scope of expressivity because it embodies spatial, interactive, and immersive dimensions, right? So, when I say interactivity, there are multiple definitions and connotations, as you can see in the definitions here. It could be a form of user control, both passive and active. It could be a reactive visual experience where your visuals sort of react to users in real time. And it could also be a dialogue between the reader and the artifact itself. And this is what I intend to explore in my project. What I've done is use computation as a creative tool. I'll just play this short video here. So, in the past, both the East and the West, we've used poetry as a context for expressive typography. And in this line of experimentation, we push the boundaries by manipulating letter forms in different ways and introducing the analogies of motion in type. And it's most clearly seen in the works of futurist poets, concrete poets. There are a plethora of examples here, but owing to the interest of time, I'll just move on. Talking about Kavya. As a dancer, I've had the privilege to read and analyze a few Indian classical works and reimagine them into performances. Recreating these pieces do require a graceful amalgamation of space, motion, voice in the service of expressing the emotion. So, trying to draw parallels between the aesthetic sensitivity, which is valuable in reimaginating poetry, and interactive typography is what I intend to explore in this project. As Kālidāsa puts it, the actual poetic expression, the meaning and word, content and form are really united, indissolubly united. And Indian Kavya really holds a profound significance, cultural significance, and it's been a constant source of inspiration for various artists and creative practitioners, especially because it stood the test of time. While being deeply rooted in historical context, it still allows for varied artistic interpretations. So, in this particular project, I pick up Kālidāsa's venerable poetry Meghadūtam, and my intent is to sort of reimagine it through interactive expressive typography, moving through space. Isn't it?
Long on the mass of meat reviving dew, this heavenly exile fixed my eager view, and still the melancholy tear suppressed, though bitterest sorrow wrung my heaving breast. This gathering darkness with a troubled heart, What must they feel whom fate and distance part? Such were my thoughts, but fancy found some solace in the glooms that deepened round.
So once the narration is over, I can start interacting with the piece. The shape and form that the type really takes here depends on the paragraph of the poem that I've taken, the visual landscape that the poet has used, and the emotional landscape as well. I have like 5 paragraphs to share, so I'm not really interacting with it enough. But I will share the link on the chat window so all of you can interact and play with it.
Counting the moments of the lingering year, her task to weep our destiny severe, with long locks drawn apart, hope reanimates her drooping heart. Still, as though mounted on your airy flight, shall she behold you with delight.
I'm interacting with it now using my keyboard keys.
Loud as 100 drums beat the thunder's sound. Softer strains, the swelling gale breathes through the canes, where Ganga leads her purifying waves, and the musk deer spring frequent from the caves. Your path retraced, resume your promised flight, when in the east the sun restores the light. Lightened by tasks like these, the day proceeds. But much I dread, a bitterer night succeeds. Her slight form, consumed by ceaseless pain, scarce like the moon hastening to its wane. Disturbed by tears, by those pallid cheeks burn, with visions of her dearer half's return. Such tasks are mine, where absent lovers stray. I speed the wanderer lightly on his way, and with my thunders teach his lagging mind new hopes, the braid of absence to unbind.
This is the point in the poem where the cloud is dispersing the message to the protagonist's lover. So the visual metaphor here is that the cloud breaks apart and it starts to rain. And I have one last one, which is sort of the metaphor to this entire poem.
Trust to futurity, for still we view the always wretched, always blessed are few. Life like a wheel's revolving orb turns around, no whirled in the air, nor dragged along the ground.
I sort of really breezed past through all those examples of each paragraph that I had picked up to visualize because of time. The link is here. All of you can play with it, interact with it. The last one, the Persian wheel that I was trying to depict, is what Kālidāsa tries to talk about. That there's always this circling wheel of fortune in life. You're happy, you're sad, and it just keeps changing again and again. And that was the final metaphor that I wanted to use. I do have a couple of research questions and pain points that I would like to address. It's an ongoing project, and I want to have future iterations. Mainly because it's a classical Indian poetry, and I was not able to work with Indian typefaces or even like scripts because I use programming as a creative medium here, and it wasn't really supporting Indian scripts. So that's something I would really like to figure out and bring in vernacular typography in this experiment. Apart from that, yes, I would like to push this and see how I can write out on a digital screen. The eventual intent was to bring it to a physical space and have audience interact with it. So how would I go about doing that? These are some things I really want to explore in the future. And that's about it. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Priti, for that amazing presentation. Once again, experimental and how actually. Your project harks back to very pioneering work done by Muriel Cooper at the Visual Language Workshop Lab
Yes,
at MIT. Right?
yes, absolutely. Her work was one of the initial research references that I had used. Yes, definitely. Maria Cooper is the pioneer, one of the pioneers.
She was a pioneer, and then she unfortunately passed away mid-90s from cancer. So we lost that talent. And then a person that sort of took over in another way, also from MIT, was David Small, and there's a lot of David Small work being showed around the 2000s till about 2010 or so. So you might want to look that up. And of course, they don't yet talk about compositions in terms of, literary compositions. They haven't reached that stage yet. And I also noticed that you had R.K. Joshi's work, Concrete Poetry,
Right.
4 examples there, right? And R.K. would somewhere he's smiling, pretty, saying, thank goodness my work is going to also get annotated with sound finally, because he did believe a lot in Nagam, sound. He talked a lot about it. So, Priti, we will thank you for that wonderful presentation, great experimentation, and of course, fit for a public interactive experience. I know some of the audiences have already started commenting, and we will let them come in at the end of the session. And it's kind of interesting, at least for me, because I'd studied a bit of Sanskrit, that I didn't know you were doing Meghadūtam, Megha Sandesham, and I kept thinking, wow, this is like Kālidāsa. So, to the uninitiated, you already managed to communicate something that that is potently there in the medium that you've used. So, Priti, thanks. We will please wait at the end of the session so that we can interact with you.
Sure. Thank you so much.